Right now, scrolling is doing something to your brain that you can actually measure. And a recent study from Stanford put these brain scanners that didn't have people lying down, but had them doing activities as they normally would, these wearable brain scanners. And they had them scrolling through social feeds like they normally would. And they watched the prefrontal cortex, that area of the brain behind your frontal lobe, the one that makes you human, the one that I've talked about in other videos. They measured before and after. And in just a few minutes, they observed four regions shifted within the prefrontal cortex, areas that are critical for brain function for everyday activities. The brain actually started to work harder and while performing worse on focus and self control. And it shows that your brain is not broken because of technology. It's just running a mental jet lag. Our habits in the digital age are really impacting our brain in negative ways. And we have to find ways to shift out of that. Otherwise, it starts to break us and wear us down. And over the long haul, it can lead to a number of problems that I've talked about in other videos, including cognitive decline, sleep issues, stress issues, mental health issues, and even early onset dementia or Alzheimer's disease that I predict in young millennials down, we will see a dramatic rise in that condition in the coming decades. Once you see why and how this works, you're never going to see a scrolling session the same way again. Let's dive into it. So, as usual, if you find value, wait till the end, give it a like, share with somebody you think may benefit, and give us a subscribe because we put out really good videos every week on Wednesdays. All right, so let me just share something real quick and we'll get started. All right, so at Zen Brain Academy, we go on deep dives, personally with me, every week, deep dives on how you can protect your brain, something that we often don't do in the digital age. We develop habits such as scrolling that are not giving us an edge. We are so surrounded by stimuli and digital activities that often it's negatively impacting our brain. Our brain is not used to that. And this Stanford study can explain honestly, very simply, why that is. So, for example, I want you to first start with the key area, the area that actually makes you human, the prefrontal cortex. It runs three key jobs. Amongst other things that it does three important things: work in memory, research work in memory for many years at Yale, and this type of working memory, what it means is it's you're taking information from the past, bringing it into the present to be able to use it in whatever you're doing. Think of reading, for example. You need to be able to remember what you just read so that as you keep reading, you start to connect things. In addition, you may have to remember something you already know so that you can connect it to whatever you're reading in the present. You're holding in mind and using information. For example, also remembering why you walked into a room. A lot of times people get so inattentive. They go and they need to do something. All of a sudden, a few seconds or a minute later, they can't remember what they were going to do. They're like, oh, I was going to do something, but I just can't remember. Working memory, prefrontal cortex. Stress shuts down dysfunction. And inhibitory control, stopping impulses, also emotional regulation. This is also related to saying appropriate things, to kind of having that social, so kind of like the social ability to know what to say, not being inappropriate, not being emotionally out of sorts, impulsive, resisting the urge to do what the body almost tells you to do. For example, when I used to do research in working memory with rodents, one of the things that what you see is that there's something called the T maze. So the animal goes up and it can go left or go right. And in this case, the animal, let's say, goes right, it gets a reward. When I pick up that animal and I put it back in the start box and lift up the gate, the animal's instinctual response is going to be to go back to the right because that's what rewarded it the previous time. But we must inhibit at that response and go left to be able to get the reward. That is a prefrontal cortex function. And you're going to see that in this study, they use this type of inhibitory prefrontal type of task. So let's go back over here. And so it's resisting, for example, the next reel, the entrainment that the AI algorithms have done to your brain to get you to go back and go back and go back, to become lazier, to if you want to do something, I was saying, you're like, you know what, I'm going to do it later. I'm just going to check out my social media and not do anything. Not sending an angry email, maybe at work. It's inhibiting impulsive responses, another prefrontal cortex function. Cognitive effort, deciding how hard you're going to work to get to be able to achieve something. And of course, also monitoring how hard you are working. So you can be more reflexive and be like, oh, you know what? I need to take a break. Sometimes people, when they get very inattentive, they are very good at getting things, but they don't know how to pace themselves. They'll go, 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 go until they start to burn out. Being able to monitor, okay, you know what? I need to take a break. That's also your brain's CEO function. It's almost like a caretaking role, not doing impulsive things, holding back, sustaining your effort, but at the same time being smart about it, not burning out, knowing what you're doing, being able to use information wisely in the present. So they put these wearable recording instruments that use infrared technology to monitor the brain in real time. So they were moving normally, behaving naturally. They weren't lying down. They were not in a lab. They were just scrolling. And as they were scrolling, they were being monitored. They were doing, afterwards, they did a test where they were monitoring prefrontal cortex function before and after scrolling. So you test executive function using this type of testing, an MBAC test or a go no go test. I'm not going into details about this test here, but you can save the name, search for them, and kind of get a feel for, pause the video, go research if you want. So you're familiar with the test. But it's a prefrontal cortex test. Then they scroll on their own on their feet naturally. After a certain amount of time, they test executive function again. They compare brain scans before and after. So it's a very simple study. And I want to mention also that this study was small. This study should be replicated. And one of the things that they found was four regions shifted. Medial prefrontal cortex. The activation of this area means heightened cognitive effort, performance monitoring. The brain is straining to keep up. It's your brain really isn't designed for extended periods of monitoring, of being focused. That has to be trained up. There's a reason why TED Talks are short. It's because after a certain amount of time, your prefrontal cortex starts to wane. And in the digital age, this actually becomes even worse because people's attention is more narrow. I put out some video some while ago about the attention span being 25% less than it was a decade or two ago, being really short in terms of second wise. And some people make this kind of joke that is shorter than a goldfish attention span. Dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, that's the working memory area. That's the area I studied a lot. I studied the medial prefrontal cortex and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex in both primates and rodents, and later on with humans. Lower activation tracked this tracking would reduce the ability to hold information in mind. You become less able to do work in the present that requires your attention, and your focus is going to deteriorate your ability to perform, to be productive. That's why some companies will be like, no, you have to leave your cellular device in a lockbox or something at work. They don't want people distracted. It really actually is a drain. You should, if you're doing work, set aside time to use the device. Don't be using it and having it freely available with notifications popping up. Set those focus, get your focus settings in order on your phone. Ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, that's the response inhibition to stop impulse control. So you can see that brain is straining, this is up. Ability to focus down to hold information. Ability to inhibit impulses is also down. You become more emotionally labile, irritable, more prone to anger, frustration, impatience. So you start to burn out, become more cranky in a sense. And then the inferior frontal gyrus suppresses motor responses. This drop correlates with the no-go task, which requires you to do kind of like a inhibitory, kind of like that task that I talked about with the rodents, where they have to go one way and then go another way. It starts to deteriorate that, so they make more mistakes. So the motor responses are impacted. And the net result is higher effort, but lower output. You become less productive. You become more clumsy in a sense. You become more prone to errors. The brain is working harder in that monitoring region while performing worse in other areas that are also critical for human function for everyday life. It's a cruel loop. You have the region that will control your ability to stop scrolling. You can't stop it because you're having a hard time controlling your impulses. And is that the same region that inferior frontal gyrus is the one that's getting depleted? And the longer you scroll, the harder it becomes to stop. And I've talked about this in other videos. So remember, it's degrading the very circuit that allows you to put this down. And I've talked about this in other videos, how AI algorithms are designed like a slot machine in a casino. And what happens in a casino is that I go and the type of entrainment or the rewards is kind of manipulating your chemistry in a sense. It's giving you these highs and these lows. And so whenever you're feeling low, 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 it gives you, spits out a reward. So it's already mathematically designed to spit out the biggest reward after it's made a certain amount of money. That's why slot machines really are terrible, unless you were to be able to know when it's going to spit out the winnings. Otherwise, it has you on this roller coaster manipulating your chemistry. And that's what social media really does at the end of the day. Those algorithms are designed to hook you. Even games do this as well, video games, especially on digital devices and small devices. So the honest caveats I should mention again, you deserve the real picture, not just hype. I don't want to put just a title and make you think that it's more than what it is. It's a small pilot study, college students only. I mean, it doesn't matter that it's college students only. It'd be better if it's other age groups, but college students are going to be using this regular. They're going to be impacted by this. That's very relevant to that age group. And many of them were already addicted. So if you ask them, they were already putting many hours on social media, on Instagram, for example. So they're heavy users, more than half of them, 55%. And the effects may differ if you're more of a casual scroller. And then, of course, the technology that was being used is newer technology. So, in essence, this study needs to be replicated and across bigger, more diverse groups. Even though it's small, it does show some consistent results that are consistent with other studies that have been done. So, I think it's worth mentioning in this video. You should take it seriously. Why does this mental jet lag, as I call it, happen? Because your social feeds are giving your nervous system rapid, unpredictable micro rewards, constant interruptions. Again, it's designed, like I said, like casino slot machines. Your prefrontal cortex is trying to keep up, but there's so much task switching, and I've talked about task switching in other videos. Every time that you're doing something and you switch to something else or you're flipping through the feed, your brain is rebooting, restarting, wanting to focus on one thing to then switch. You're training your brain to narrow the focus, to switch repeatedly. And this is, in a sense, happening without periods of rest. Why? Because we're of the habits that we develop. We're doing things, flipping from one thing to another. And this revs up that monitoring system. The working memory, impulse areas, etc., start to deplete. Your brain is trying to stop whatever you're doing. You can't, you're not able to, or you don't. And that addiction, this is why it was worse in a lot of the subset groups that they did in this study, is because they're already addicted and it's even harder for them to break because addiction is an adaptation. Your nervous system has already changed to whatever you've been doing chronically, and then it makes it harder to then break that habit. You feel wired, you feel foggy, and of course, it's like crossing 6 time zones. And all of a sudden, your brain just feels off. It's not that your brain is broken, it's just out of rhythm. If I'm coupling this as well, and of course, we don't reset either. If I'm coupling this as well with being in a box in a room, I don't have contact right over here, there's a window beside me. I don't have contact with nature. I'm not getting outdoors, getting sunlight, getting cues. I'm being thrown off. And what that will do is throw off that rhythm even more. It's the reason why people then have a hard time maybe waking up, going to bed. They're throwing their whole system off. And I've talked about this in other videos, the dangers that this poses as you get older, as you keep stacking these problems over and over, and it creates more and more changes in your brain in your networks, even in your DNA code. So it's happening at multifactorial level, the genomic level, DNA level, the DNA code level, the proteomic level, at the level of your molecules, proteins that are doing stuff. It's really, really destructive over time. And is the reason why we see so many conditions that didn't seem to exist before rising and rising in this period. It's not that we're getting better at diagnosing, is that there's more and more cases. And of course, we're picking them up because medicine is able to detect this. So here's a three-layer reset. Don't use another app necessarily. The fix is not another app. More apps will not undo what the apps did. What you want is start practicing, begin small, 5 minutes of uninterrupted screen free attention. Just one task, mindfulness, or sit for mindfulness, sit for journaling, go out for a walk, take a break. No music, no podcast. Maybe you go for a walk, but don't go for a walk with your cellular device. Just do one thing. If you need to do the dishes, go do the dishes, or maybe the laundry. Just kind of focus on folding the laundry. Try to focus on one thing and build up. You can integrate this into your workflow where you do focus blocks of maybe 30 minutes or an hour, not more than an hour and a half. Because remember, we've talked about how your brain operates in ultradian cycles. And if I get out of sync and I push beyond that, it really deteriorates my ability to function. Layer two, scroll boundary. Decide what you're picking up the phone for before you pick it up. Don't just impulsively like have the phone decide for you. Oh, there's a buzz. Let me grab it. That's why I'm not a fan of Apple Watches, those type of devices. They are great for in training. They're not just for monitoring, but they're also monitoring health or even monitoring your privacy, your conversations, which is not necessarily a good thing. But they're also in training you with the buzz when it's connected to your phone. I remember I used to have one and I would be doing an event or teaching or something, and my wrist would be buzzing, 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 and I just took it off. And because it was just too distracting all the time getting this buzzing. You need to decide to first engage. And you don't want something else deciding for you. Reduce those repeat triggers that are strengthened by the notifications. And then lastly, and of course, when you're working, you can set the notifications so there's nothing going in. And remember, you can set notifications so that if you need to get notified by an important person in your company or a boss or a family member or what have you, you can set that. You can set specific people that they do go through, but you don't have Instagram or emails or something where it's a lot more distraction. You don't want that to be so pervasive. Layer three is reset pause. After a long scroll, 90 seconds at least of not doing anything. If you're using your cellular device, then take a break. Do nothing. Let your networks resynchronize before you go at it again. Protect your attention like it matters. Remember, wherever you're putting your attention, your energy is being siphoned into whatever you're putting your attention. So value it. That is why books have value, because somebody decided to put their energy, their love, their wisdom, and write something that may be overflowing with value, with power. And when you read it, you're taking that in. Change what you consume in the digital age, extremely important. And if you need help, join Zen Brain Academy for free for a month. We also put out a free newsletter, reset protocols inside, a lot of great hacks that we put in. I put in a video that's a companion to, not a video, a newsletter that's a companion to this video. Remember, protect that attention in the digital age. It's how they're getting you. It's how they're destroying your nervous system one scroll at a time, one game at a time, whatever activities you're doing, value your attention more than ever before. Social media, YouTube should be a mastermind for you, something that's giving you value. Join groups like Zen Brain Academy that can help you level up and navigate, have a sense of community, and really empower yourself with experts. All right? So if you found value in this video, again, please share with somebody that you think may benefit. Give us a like, subscribe. I'm here to serve. If you post any questions below on the comments, I'm more than happy to review them, create a video tailored just for you. I'll be back next week. Take care. Stay zen.